Madam Mayor, other mayors, councillors, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Permit me to speak on the mic, Madam Mayor, because I come from the third world, where we are not permitted to shout at home, and we save our screams for the street when we are agitated. So this being a rather comfortable place, I think I can save my voice for the streets of Pakistan, where we do need our voices most times. I've been asked to talk about human rights in Pakistan, and I believe that we cannot really divorce human rights from the political course that we have taken. I was very saddened. I was traveling when I read what had happened with the avalanche in Siachen. And many of us who have been in the forefront of building peace between India and Pakistan have been warning that that inhospitable weather at Siachen Mountains is absolutely inhuman for any soldier, be they Indian or Pakistani, to stay there. I believe that it is the, I would say, failure of both countries, the leadership of both countries, not to be able to resolve that matter earlier. As far as India and Pakistan are concerned, I'm always reminded of a story where I had a little cousin who was always crying. And once he was crying so loudly that people went and tried to stop him and said, "Please tell us why you're crying." And he started crying again, saying, "Why am I crying? That's the point, because I've forgotten why I'm crying." So as far as India and Pakistan is concerned, you can resolve the Kashmir issue, there'll be some other issue. And I do believe that it is only civilian leadership in both countries that can forge a sustainable peace. The Indians in the past felt that Pakistan's dictators would be the only courageous leaders who could bring peace between India and Pakistan, and how wrong they proved themselves to be. Hello?
Hello, sorry.
How
Said, the former Minister of Maldives, which I mentioned.
And I have to also thank him, because as a UN Special Rapporteur on freedom of religion or belief, he allowed me as the first rapporteur to go to Maldives. And I still remember, I saw Maldives as a tourist, and I saw it as a UN rapporteur, and I saw both sides of it. So, and even in my report could predict what was going to happen during transition. And like Maldives, Pakistan has also now in a transition to democracy. It's a rocky transition, it's a flawed transition, because most of the constitution that we have is really based its foundations on many of the amendments that dictators have made. And woefully, even leadership, political leadership, has not had the courage to weed away those very ungraceful, undemocratic, even articles that are not only ungraceful and undemocratic of the Constitution, but they are self-destructs to the politicians themselves. I don't know of many other constitutions in the world who actually qualify people to the parliament if they are good Muslims, they say all their prayers in time, they fast, and they are sagacious, as the word is. I don't know what it means in the English language. And if that is the criteria, then it ought to have been a parliament of utter priests, because even I don't think priests come to the level of qualification required to be in the Parliament of Pakistan. Now, either you respect the law or you don't respect the law. So the first message is, we will bring in these laws, but you don't need to respect them unless we have something against you. And these are the clauses or the articles in the Constitution which I call easy, ready articles for persecuting political leadership. And leadership accepts them. And they have been used very selectively as well. As far as human rights, conventional human rights violations are concerned, they have not in any way been undermined or decreased with the coming of the democratic transition. The change that we welcome is that there are no more political prisoners in Pakistan. But that's not enough. We've heard our Prime Minister and our President say it so gleefully. But if all of us sacrificed for 60-odd years and fought in the streets against dictatorship. And many people lost their lives, including the leader of the ruling party. And many people went in their youth to jails, being tortured. I don't think it's enough for somebody to stand up and say, well, we have no political prisoners in Pakistan. During Musharraf's times, disappearances started in Pakistan. First, a lot of disappearances were people who were handed over to the first world, by the third world. And they were condoned, glossed over by policymakers of the first world. And when our intelligence agencies thought that if they could violate the law, for those people who consider themselves guardians of rule of law, surely they can help themselves too. And the next lot was series of disappearances, we do not know the numbers, but large enough, grave enough, which came from Balochistan. And that was the start of alienation of Balochistan. It was not only disappearances, previous to disappearances, there was pre-planned killing of one of their leaders, which gave a very strong message to all Baloch nationals that we will not tolerate any dissent, any independent thinking in Balochistan. And I believe that we've come to a stage now in Balochistan where if you go and complain of torture, it's considered to be minor in comparison to kind of violations that take place there. I like that you add peace, because there can be an erosion of rule of law and an erosion of justice and democracy indeed, if we have troubled times. So like in all conflict areas, we find that human rights violations take place wherever there is an army operation. Human rights violations have taken place during the Swat operation. Human rights violations continue to take place in Fatah. Today in Swat, there are over 200 detainees that have been there for over a year, who have not been tried, and therefore a law has been made, which by any standard is even worse than your previous law of search and stop and search, as it's called, stop and frisk law. Anybody can be detained for a number of days. The evidence of a security officer is conclusive to prove guilt. That law has been challenged, and our worry is that the people who have challenged the law are exactly partners of people who made the law. So this law will probably be rubber stamped by the courts as being a valid law, except a few jiggles here and there. And I believe that we have now a situation in Pakistan where we do have a civilian rule, which is a facade, but actual policy makers are exactly the same administration, or as we call them, establishment in Pakistan. They call the shots in Balochistan, they call the shot in Azad Kashmir. Even the Chief Justice of Azad Kashmir is appointed not in Islamabad, but in Para or GHQ. They hold Gilgit and Baltistan, and if you look at the website, only about a month ago, the Human Rights Commission warned that there is going to be a sectarian riot, and sectarian riots have already started. They will flare up to an extent that evacuation of people from Gilgit and Baltistan may become impossible. Exactly saying that, exactly pointing out that even the road was being cut off, and they were being physically isolated from the rest of the country. And sadly, we see that that has happened. Therefore, I believe that this is a great challenge for any country where civilian authorities come into transition. When they lose governance, when they do not take preventive action, people begin to question democracy itself. Though that is not the answer, and though I would hardly advocate that, because I do believe that even the worst democracy is better than the best dictatorship. And we've had all kinds, believe me, and nothing compares with a democratic rule to a dictatorship. We have the usual problem of traditional thinking, of violence against women. And that is, if you look at the patterns, if violence in society will increase, then violence against vulnerable will also increase. So when my friends, feminist friends, are talking about violence against women, I believe that they have to address the entire issue of violence, for violence against women to de-escalate. We have a situation now in Pakistan where we find, and it is reportedly said, that the judiciary, there is a tension between the judiciary and the government, I wouldn't say the executive. And the reason for that tension, which often is in most countries, if you look at India or even if you look at the United States, there is always a tension between the judiciary and the government. But here it is menacing tension, and the kind of tension which disrupts a system. So what we believe is that we want the democratic system to continue and deepen rather than be uprooted. The manner in which the Supreme Court is dealing with it is uprooting the system. And we believe that that is not a course to take, and possibly to be able to convince Supreme Court judges that they can never be independent under a dictatorship. We've seen that in the past. And nobody can have freedom for a few people, whereas the whole country is subjugated by dictators. But here, I would say the upside of it, and I will just speak for another few minutes and end it there, because Pakistan is like an onion, you keep peeling, you'll find something new to say about it. I have seen other countries like Afghanistan, and one of the reasons, not all the reasons, but one of the reasons that democracy or any system did not take root there was the absence of political parties. And despite our differences with many of the political parties, we are still blessed that they have survived. Because over the years, we have seen all political parties suffer. Their leadership threatened, their leadership incarcerated, their leadership even attacked physically, brothers parting ways because of interference of intelligence agencies. And when I look back from 60s to now, I am surprised that ANP still exists, which is the Wali Khan party. I am surprised that many of the Baloch nationalist parties still exist. I am surprised that even People's Parties still exist. And I am surprised that even PMLN still exists. But these parties have survived somehow. And the recent few years has also exposed people. In the past, one used to wonder, because people had two faces in Pakistan. One was a public face, and the other was a face which was hidden. So now exactly people know who is the establishment. Who are the people who represent the establishment. Whether they are in my community of lawyers, whether they are journalists, whether indeed they are judges. Now it is all out there in the open. So everybody is sitting in a glass house. The quarrel there is that every segment of society which has erred in the past believes that they should be forgiven for their past deeds, but not the others. For example, our judges often argue, and the argument of their supporters is, that they suffered for 1 year while they were asked to leave during Mr. Musharraf's period. So that 1 year of suffering was enough, and now they are new, brand new, and new casting, and so a new label, and they've come back with a new label, and they should be forgiven their past. Well, I am a child of a person who was a politician and in the opposition, who lost all his property because he opposed the government, who was in jail for years on end, and I lost my youth with my father. So I don't see why I should forgive the judiciary that justified every illegal act of theirs. Why I should forgive them and not forgive, for example, People's Party, though I have nothing to do with that party and I have a lot of criticism for that party, why I should not forgive them, considering that their leader lost her life for the sake of democracy. And I do know that she worried when she came, because I met her 2 weeks before she was assassinated, and she was fully aware of the fact that she could be assassinated. Either I don't forgive anyone, or I forgive everyone. But it cannot be two standards that have to be applied in Pakistan. So therefore, I believe that selectivity or running with the past, we have to decide as a nation, do we dig up the past? If we want to dig up the past, then every bit and piece of the past has to be dug up. But if we want to go forward, then the way forward is to make new partnerships with people in smaller provinces, particularly with the Baloch, to resolve the Kashmir issue, not in the interest of national solidarity, because there is no such thing as national solidarity, in the interest of the people of the subcontinent. And if we are going to be people-oriented, then issues can be resolved. But if we are going to act like national security states, then no issue is going to be solved. And that is a mindset that we need to change. That mindset, I believe, can be only changed if we use democracy as a vehicle, and therefore our support for a democratic system, rather than for A political party or B political party. And I do believe that to have democracy running, you need an independent judiciary. I've often said that an independent judiciary, not now, but always, during transition, is the backbone of a human body, like the backbone of a transition. And if you don't have the backbone, then transitions will always be flipped, and there will be a reversal of that transition. We saw that in Nepal, we saw that in Maldives, for sure, we saw that in Bangladesh, and we saw that when judiciary decided to be truly independent in Nepal, even a very rocky transition did sustain. And when I mean an independent judiciary, I mean a judiciary that does not play to the media. I mean a judiciary that is independent of populism as well. Because populist judiciaries are dangerous institutions. A judiciary has to be sober, a judiciary has to be even unpopular, but they have to decide according to the law and according to human rights, according to people's fundamental rights, despite the fact whether traditional values accept it or don't accept it. So I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak, because another side of Pakistan that our friends abroad do not see is that yes, Pakistan is messy, but in this mess are also people who have struggled hard. In this mess are also people who have struggled for 60 years. This is not a country where dictators have spent 2 or 3 or 4 decades of their lives. The day a dictator, and very dangerous dictator, stepped into power, that very same day, people have been out in the streets trying to say, we do not accept it. And Pakistanis will not accept oppression, will not accept dictatorship, despite the strong allies that dictatorships find in Western countries because their interests match. But we will defy that, and I am quite certain that we will go forward because of the resilience of the people. So much has happened, yet you don't find hordes and hordes of Pakistan leaving the country. Pakistan is leaving the country. They're sitting there, they're getting kidnapped, they're getting killed, they're getting threatened, but they're not leaving because that is our country and those are our people, and we want to make that society what it truly is, not what dictators made us to be. Thank you.